In this episode, I show you how to put all of the order creation and lot size calculations together. This episode is an absolute monster of an episode, and there's definitely some things you need to have completed before you do this. Now, I try my best to make all episodes as standalone as possible, but in this particular instance, you really needed to have completed the 3 episodes that I've done prior to this one. That is your lot size calculator, your testing your order, and then placing the order on MetaTrader 5. The reason is that this particular episode joins those 3 functions together into one overarching function, and that provides you with a whole bunch of options that we can explore in future episodes. Together, we're going to be learning the best way to place orders on MetaTrader 5, but in a way that is safe and secure and is going to protect you from loss. Now, when we talk about building these orders on MetaTrader 5, there's 4 distinct steps that we need to go through, and I'll show you how to do each and every single one of them. The first one is to calculate your lot size, which can also be called the volume. This is what determines the size of your order on MetaTrader 5. The next thing you need to do is to check your order. Now, what this does is it sends it to the MetaTrader 5 server without being an order and checks it. If there's any issues that it comes up with, it can't check everything, but it checks a lot of things. And if there's any issues, it lets you know before you attempt to place that order. The third thing, as you've probably guessed, is to actually place the order itself. And I'll show you how to do that, but also how to catch some of the really, really common error codes that MetaTrader 5 can give you and where to go if you want to check out what they mean. And finally, we want to wrap all of those pieces together so that your MetaTrader 5 Python trading bot absolutely nails the order placement in a way that is fast, efficient, and safe. Now, I've broken this into 4 separate episodes so that you can zero in on whatever topic you kind of feel like is going to be the most helpful for you. So jump into the description below if you want to see the links to any episodes, and let's continue. Before I show you all of the code to link these all together, I wanted to frame what we're trying to achieve because there's a lot of things that's gone prior to this, and I want to make sure it makes sense. Way back when we first created our strategy, we set it up in such a way that whenever we get a true signal from our EMA cross detector, we generate the trading values that we're going to need. So that might include things like the take profit, the stop loss, and the entry price. Now in main.py, you can see here where I'm just going to go through and show you how to retrieve the last entry. And then we'll go into a little bit further about how this particular episode allows you to clean all of this code up and combine all of those functions that we did before. So one way of looking at this is having a look at the last line of the data frame that we did. Now remember, that data frame is 1,000 candles. You can see there I just take the tail and I copy it and then I print it there. And what do you see? You can see that the last one was false. Now, if that had been true, for instance, if we had an EMA cross strategy, that had detected an EMA cross, and that's where we wanted our values, that particular value would be true. So we can test the EMA cross to see if it's true. If it is true, it will print signal has been found, and if it is false, then it will print no signal. So if we run that again, you can see here, no signal for this trade. The rest of this episode is putting that all together. To do that, we're going to start by creating a new file called make_trade.py. Now, this particular file is going to contain a whole bunch of functionality that we're going to be using to put our trade together. Now, in a sneak preview of some of the other things you'll get on this channel, we can use this to add all sorts of interesting things like sending trades to Discord. If you happen to have a Discord server that you like to monitor, or maybe you use Slack at work or at home and you want to add it to a Slack thing, or maybe even want to send it to Twitter. Whatever it is, by separating it out and putting it into its own file, we get this whole bunch of amazing functionality that we can add into it. Now, for this particular series, all I'll be doing is just putting in the 3 things that we've covered so far, that being calculating your volume, getting your order sorted as a test, and then sending it off to MetaTrader 5. So let's have a look at it. Now, there's a few things that we're going to need for our variables. We need our balance. We need the comment, which is a great way of separating out the different kind of strategies that we're running on the same account. The amount that we want to risk, which is as a percentage, but expressed as a decimal, the symbol, and then those trade values. It's take profit, stop loss, and stop price. Now, in this particular episode, we'll keep it reasonably simple when it comes to the balance. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But one of the cool things that you can do is create an auto compounding feature. And I'll be actually covering that in a future episode on this channel. See here, getting to the end of my functions that are, sorry, my commentary on the function. Here's the pseudocode for what we're going to be doing. So the first step will be to format all of the values that come into the function. That's really important because we really don't want to be making any errors in the values that come in terms of the data types that they're in. Then we're going to determine the lot size, which we covered in a previous episode. Then we're going to send that trade to MT5, which includes checking it. Then we're going to return that outcome back to the strategy function. Some of the things that we could do in the future, which I think are pretty exciting and a pretty cool thing about when you're building your own trading bot, maybe sending your trade outcome or the signal off to Discord. One of the things I've done with our trading bots here at algocont.trade is setting up a REST API to send them to our website for our algorithm one. We could also manage a way of the different accounts that we might use for our currency. So, for instance, if I'm using Australian dollars, but I'm trading a USD pair, I might want to convert that prior to coming in. We won't be covering those future ones in this particular episode, but they are things that you'll be able to get as I develop them for the channel. Okay, let's format the values. Okay, the balance needs to be a float. It also needs to be rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, take profit is the same. Okay, stop loss. Stop price. Okay, next step, we want to determine our lot size. To do that, we're going to use our helper function that we created earlier, which is calc lot size. Then we're going to pass it all of our variables. See there, I just had a quick mental blank as to what variables needed to go in there, so I quickly went and checked. Now we're going to send it to MT5. Now, determining the trade type is pretty simple for this particular strategy. We're only using buy stops and sell stops, and it's pretty straightforward to determine a buy stop. A buy stop is going to happen when the stop price is greater than the stop loss, and a sell stop is going to occur when the stop price is less than the stop loss. Now, you might have a more complex strategy that you want to take into account, and that's fine. There's plenty of different ways of doing it. This is just a really simple way to demonstrate to you how to go about determining it. See there, I got a little bit confused about the numbering system that I was using. I'll change that in a moment. My son was not having a good night last night, so I was up late before I made this. Let's get the trade outcome from NT5. Okay, well, we've got all of these values that we need for our trade outcome. Now, technically, I wouldn't need to put direct and equals false in here because that is the default value, but I like to make sure that I always include all the parameters in my functions. Then we return the outcome back to the user. I'll add in a couple of to-dos here. Now, one of the cool things about PyCharm, which is the IDE that I'm using here, is that those to-dos are just going to constantly remind me that it's work to be done in the future. You absolutely don't need these to make the function work. I just think that they're fun and cool things to do, and they can really add a lot of extra functionality to your trading bot pretty easily. With our make trade function created, we can now integrate that into our strategy. Now, this is where it starts to get really exciting because we're actually going to be taking our strategy to the next level. So see there, I've gone back to our strategy and now I'm starting to update it and include a few extra things that we want to do. So for instance, I might want to check the previous trade to make sure that actually works. And then if it works, send it to MetaTrader 5. If you remember back in our main.py, that's exactly what we did. We got the last line of our data frame and we checked it. Well, we're going to pull all of that functionality into the strategy and take it out of main. Okay, so we get our data tail and we copy it. Okay, if we have trade event equals sorry, if we have our trade event EMA cross is equal to true, I'm going to return that. Okay. Now, in the next little section, you'll see where I actually make an error in my code. And I've had a request from a few people who follow me to actually see some of that error checking. So I decided not to edit it out as part of the video. I think that making errors when you're coding is a really, really common thing. And really, one of the key skills I think for programmers is the ability to figure out what your error is and why it did that. So I've just left this in there just as a demonstration of that. Sometimes the risk when you're creating these videos and you edit out the errors, although that probably makes it easier for people who are learning, it also kind of gives this false impression that somehow, you magically know all of the code off the top of your head. And that's just not true. It's a lot of research that goes into all of these, and this is just an example of it. Okay, so you can see what I did there. I had to go find out what I'd done wrong. Turned out that I'd forgotten to add a couple of things. So I went back and added them, and now we're going to run it again. And what do you see? I get a false value, which is exactly what I got before. Okay, and that's great. So that has really simplified our main function and really demonstrates that EMA cross is working so far. What we want to do next then is take our strategy function and start to implement that make trade piece of it. So make trade is going to require a few little bits of extra pieces of information that we haven't actually added to our strategy function so far. Now, this is important, and I've chosen to place it in the strategy function because figuring out what your balance is and how much you want to risk can be a key part of your strategy when we're talking about risk management. So I've added these in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and update our EMA cross strategy function with the extra things that we need. For our comment, we're going to use the comment as a way to delineate the strategy that we're using on the symbol that we're using. This means that we could be running multiple strategies on the same MetaTrader account, which can be super handy rather than trying to split off into different MT5 accounts and having to deal with that mess. You can literally just trade all different strategies on your same account. That will impact your drawdown, which is important, but there are some advantages to it as well. Now we're going to make the trade. We've got all of the information that we need. And you can see here now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using that last line or the tail of the data frame that we use to extract the values that we need for our take profit, stop price, and stop loss. This is where you can really start to see the strategy come together with all of the work that we've been doing to get to this point. Personally, I find this very exciting. Okay, now you could sort of see earlier in the episode I forgot about that dot values piece, so I've made sure I've added it in this time. I removed that thing that happened before, and we return true if it worked. That's now no longer valid. And now we're going to talk about our make trade outcome. Now, initially, we're just going to set it to false, which admittedly doesn't really give us a lot of information, but that's fine for what we're doing so far. If we run main.py again, nothing should change because we've done all of our work in the function. And what do you see? You see there, I updated the positional arguments, so balance and amount to risk. And now I need to add these back into my strategy. Now I'm going to hard code these values for now. And in a future episode, we'll talk about how to make that a bit more dynamic. And there we go. False, because there was no trade on that particular data. In the next episode, we're going to start making this bot trade continuously.